Okie dokie, you all know what time it is. Generic fantasy music is in the background. There's probably a still image of an elf in front of you, and it is another lore video. Now, ladies and gentlemen, you might be like, another lore video about another stupid stinking elves. Yeah. I asked my patrons from our Patreon what they wanted next between the Sundering, Throg the Troll King, or, crap, who was the last one? Don't remember. Oh, the Red Duke. And they all tied at 2, and since I had just finished the Sundering Omnibus, which is a collection of books, I figured I'd just do the one I'm more refreshed on, since it was a tie vote. Alright, so let's get on with it. The Sundering, what the hell is it and why should you care? It is the creation of the Dark Elves. It's how the Dark Elves and High Elves became 2 separate things rather than one race. It's the greatest event in the Elven history. Greatest not being good, I meant as in proportion, scale, epicness. Right. Okay. So, to understand the Sundering, first you have to understand the elves. Very, very short version of their past. Anarion, the Defender, was the greatest warrior the elves had ever seen. Calidor Dragontaber was one of the best mages. They together fought to stem the tide of demons across the entire world, and Ulthuan itself, the island the elves live on. They killed them all. Killed all the demons. They're great. They're amazing heroes. They're super badasses. Everybody celebrated them. Everyone who fought in those wars became like a prince, got some land, got paintings of them. Everybody loves them. Great. Cool. Everybody loved demons. Then the demons got kicked out. Peace descended upon the islands. And with peace, there are no problems! Yay, no problems. Everybody's just having a good time. Or are they? It's hard to live up to your fathers, your forefathers, your grandfathers when there's nothing going on. And that was one of the big problems of a name you might find familiar, Malekith. So as his father passed away, they needed a new Phoenix King after Anarion. All the elven princes got together and voted. And Marathi said, alright, we all know it's Malekith, right? Yep, it's Malekith, cool. And all the other princes were like, wait, hold on now. We think it should be Belshazzar of Tiranoc. We are happening upon a time of peace. Belshazzar is a little bit more of a statesman than young Malekith here. Maybe we should do that. She gets wildly pissed off, but Malekith accepts it. And he bows graciously before Belshazzar. Everybody loves him. Much clapping, much rejoicing. Also, Malekith, at the time, it's not super clear, but he doesn't seem to want to be the Phoenix King, as he set his eyes on the distant lands outside of Ulthuan. He really wanted to reclaim his father's legacy as like a warrior, an adventurer, a conqueror. He wanted to go out there and make a name for himself. He didn't really want to sit on the Phoenix throne just yet and legislate. So he turns to Marathi and he says, later bitch, and sails off. Right, this isn't a lore video about Malekith, but he is a central character, so we'll touch on him very quickly. Malekith sails out, and to understand this guy, all you need to know is that he first shows up at a city. It is a colony. It is besieged by greenskins, and the ruling prince that's supposed to be defending it isn't, just because reasons. Malekith shows up with a giant army and offers to help them if they switch their allegiance to Nagaraith, his homeland, rather than the prince they used to serve. They say no, and he says, alright, and he starts to sail away. They flag him back, he comes back, and they go, okay, we're all gonna die if you don't save us, so save us, Big Daddy Malekith. And he does. He very swiftly just annihilates the greenskins. There's much rejoicing, and he continues on. So Malekith roams the old world, just destroying greenskins wherever he comes across them. Occasional chaos worshippers, but there's not a lot at this point in time. There's not a lot of demons, not a lot of excitement. And greenskins are relatively easy to completely body, right, for an elven host. I mean, you have super elite knights, you have amazing spearmen, archers, maybe some dragons. It's not super clear on whether or not he had dragons, because in some sources he did, in some sources he didn't. But he is wiping the floor with them. And while there's a lot of victories, and the people of Ulthuan, the main island, are like, yeah, look at Malekith go, he's kicking so much ass. Malekith does not feel that way, and he is getting increasingly angry that there's nothing worth his time. Like, killing greenskins is not worth his time in his mind. So finally he happens across a smaller people, hardy, muscular, they have technology, and he's like, yeah, this is it, a good proper fight, let's go. Ah, shit, they're good guys. And he learns of the dwarves. Now, Malekith made second contact with the dwarves. There was a different elf who already made contact with them, but Malekith promptly murders that guy and takes the credit. He becomes best friends with the Dwarven High King, Snorri, who is later Grombrindal, as you would all know him. And he opens up trade with the dwarves, which is pretty huge for the elves. They get access to repeater crossbows, which is great. Dwarven runes, runed weapons, things of the sort. A little bit of Gromril, gold. So a new age of prosperity for the elves is here, and it's all in the back of Malekith. Whoops! Belshazzar sails in at the last second and signs the agreement that Malekith set up over several decades. But Belshazzar's name is the one that's on the thing, so the elves celebrate Belshazzar for opening trade with the dwarves. Malekith grumbles and wanders off, intent upon more exploration and riches. Doesn't really care that much that Belshazzar stole his credit. He doesn't like it, but he doesn't care that much. An interesting thing that is covered in this book, really quickly, is why the elves and the dwarves were friends at first. We all know they're not friends now in the present timeline, but at first they were friends, and it's kind of interesting. The books don't go into it super hardcore, but they do open your eyes to it. It made me realize that, like, in Lord of the Rings, in any fantasy medium I read where the elves are super long-lived, but they're kind of jaded assholes. I don't know. I didn't really like elves for that. But this book actually made it okay. Like, the concept of being an elf and you live for thousands of years. I mean, imagine you make a friend in, like, Reichland, right? You make a friend, let's call him Bruce, and you make another friend, a Logir, a dwarf. You drink with them, you fight with them, you have a grand old time. You gotta go home. Well, elves are super fucked up about their concept of time, so to sail home, it'll take them like 10 years, because they'll just hang out places, like they'll sail for 3 days, and then camp for a month, and then sail for 3 days, and then camp somewhere else for a month, because time's very nebulous when you live that long. And by the time they get back, maybe you have another adventure and another drink with your buddies, the human and the dwarf. Okay, cool. And then you sail away again. Then you come back. Well, now 20 years have passed, and all of a sudden that human is like 50, which in the old world, I mean, you know, he's old. He's very old now. So your human friend doesn't want to go on adventures anymore. He doesn't really want to drink until the sun comes up anymore. He doesn't want to do any of that stuff with you. He's like a family and kids. And you're kind of bitter. And then you sail away and you go home and you come back, and he's 60 now, and he's dead. He had a heart attack, or he got killed by some greenskins or something. So this friend you tried to make, you got like 2 good experiences with him, 1 bitter experience, and then the 4th was a terrible experience because he died. Well, the dwarf is still there. The dwarf's still the same as he ever was. And the dwarves are naturally good to be friends with the elves for 2 reasons. 1, they love to party from the moment they're born to the moment they die. Like, Dwarven High Kings will party on their fucking deathbed. So they don't really age out of a good time like humans tend to. They don't slow down. And they're naturally long-lived. Well, they're not like elves who live thousands of years. They'll live 300 or so. So now, what I mentioned with the human, right? You got 2 good visits, 2 bad visits, one of which being very bad. Alright. For the dwarves, you get like 30, 40, 50. So, Malekith, meeting the dwarves, he becomes really good friends with Snorri, keeps going back to fight with him, and the fun part about fighting with Snorri is he gets some of that epic stuff he feels. The dwarves they live in the old world, so they know where all the best monsters are. They fight a dragon ogre Shaggoth together. They fight trolls, all these cool things. So Malekith's getting a little bit of that adventuring he wanted, but not enough. Not enough. So he's a hero of the colonies to people who know what he did. He likes the dwarves, and he talks to the dwarves and decides he's gonna go north and fight chaos, like in the Chaos Wastes. So he marches an elven army north. He only asks that people that are super suicidal go with him, because he's like, boys, we're not coming back. And most of his host is like, yeah, Malekith, because he largely has a host of these same elves who want to do what their grandfathers and their great-grandfathers did and fight the demons, but there aren't any demons. So they go north. In the Chaos Waste, they don't find abominations that they want to fight. They mostly just find human tribes, which at this point are extremely small and weak. And they suffer attrition due to the Chaos Waste themselves. But it's not like grand fights. They're dying of starvation. They're dying because a hole opened up underneath one of them. You know, dumb things. So they're having a bad time. And Malekith comes across this city. It's a giant city up in the Chaos Wastes. And he's like, finally, maybe something cool. Well, the city's empty. Can't find any demons in it. But he did find a crown. He puts on the circlet of iron, his now famous crown with all the horns on it, all the doodads. And it shows him the future. It shows him all the winds of magic. It shows him that he's meant to be the Phoenix King. It shows him the power and the glory he could get from being the greatest, most terrible, most bloody, most murderous Phoenix King of all. And yeah, he turns super evil. I mean, he was already leaning towards kind of being brutal, as we saw with... he murdered the first elf who met the dwarves because he kind of wanted the credit. And yeah, so he's never been a nice guy, but the Circle of Iron definitely made him a little bit more whoops. So while he's up in the Chaos Waste and starting to think about coming home, Morathi's been busy in Nagaraith, the northernmost province where they're all from, where the armies of the elves are from. And Morathi has been building up the forbidden cults of pleasure and murder, cults that worship the demonic gods and some of the less favorable elven gods. So, she's not super popular. Nagaraith is becoming increasingly isolated politically as more people kind of know what's going on, but kind of political wishy-washy, don't want to commit to doing anything about it. And Morathi at last launches a war against all of Ulthuan, a shadow war, I guess you would call it. Well, that's a Lethanar's thing, but you get my point. All the cultists are attacking and murdering everybody, and she's even swayed some of the princes to her side. But Nagaraith itself isn't on their side yet, kind of. The army is mostly with Malekith. But some of like the Kingsguard is still there in Nagaraith. Malekith comes back. This is kind of a weird, not great written part of the book. But Malekith does come back, and you're in his perspective, and he sees all of the damage the cults have wrought, and he sees the debauchery the cults have, and you're in his head as the reader, and he's like, this is terrible, this is awful. But then when he gets back to the capital, he fights Morathi, and the fight's also kind of stupid, if I'm being honest, but whatever. He fights Morathi, and when he's talking to her, he's like, oh, I don't care what the cults did. The cults are fine as long as they're a tool for my power. And I'm like, but you did. The reader saw that you cared like 10 minutes ago. Like, okay, whatever. Little plot hole aside. Morathi kicks the shit out of him because when they're fighting, they're about equals, but she can just like point. You think I'm kidding, but she can point at him and his heart starts to burst. And she's like squeezing his heart like, you know, with magic, so she's across the fucking room, and he falls to the ground. She stands over him and does a big evil bad guy villain speech while holding his heart, and then she gets distracted for a moment, and he like stands up and like kicks her over, and then he stands over her with a sword. He's like, I win. She's like, I always knew you were better than me, son. And he's like, I knew I was better than you. And I'm kind of reading like, I mean, she can point at you and explode your heart. If she hadn't just not done that, you would have lost. And then he's like, you will serve me now. And she's like, yes, Big Daddy Malekith, I'll always serve you. I love you so much. And he's like, and if you ever try anything, you know I'll kill you. And she's like, yeah, because you're so much better than me. And they both seem to mean it. And I'm sitting there as a reader like, but she could just point at you and explode your heart. Like, this is kind of stupid. I'm sorry. Overall, the Malekith's plot is pretty good, but this part is just kind of objectively stupid. That he thinks he could ever have influence over her, and he believes it, and she seems to believe him, and I'm like, neither of you were paying attention to the fight you were in. Whatever. So it's stupid. But Malekith beats Morathi, and he decides to try and win the good graces of the High Elves. He tells Morathi to send the cults back into hiding. They're going to say that they killed them all. And then he sends Morathi to prison with Belshazzar, the Phoenix King. And he begs for mercy for her. And Belshazzar says, huh, sure. Yeah, that seems reasonable. Sure, nothing bad will happen with that. But it does. A couple years go by. Malekith consolidates his power, grows his prestige by hunting the cults in quotations. But in reality, He is just gathering their strength and sending them around the islands. So round 2 of the war. Malekith pretends to lose to the cults. And then he goes down to the Phoenix King and he says, Big Daddy Phoenix King, I need an army. I need a big army to beat all the cults and to be the hero of Ulthuan again. And the Phoenix King goes, no, I'm going to give it to Imric. Not that Imric. I was tricked, but it's not that Imric. It's Imric's great-great-grandfather, which after him, all children are named Imric. But he was the first one to be named Imric of that bloodline, and then he renames himself Calidor, not the nation Calidor, but Calidor Dragon Tamer Calidor. But he's actually Imric, and all his kids are. It's kind of whatever. Okay, but he's like, yeah, Imric's a great commander. He has dragons. We're gonna go with him. And Malekith's like, nope, murders the Phoenix King, goes to the Shrine of Assyrian, where all the other princes were going to meet to figure out what to do about this war that's brewing. And the Shrine of Assyrian, for those of you who don't know, is it's a shrine. Wow, he big leap in logic there, Game Boy. It's a shrine. Anyway, it's a shrine to Assyrian. Again, shocking. But Assyrian is pretty much like, if you know the Greek pantheon, Assyrian's Zeus. Like he's the highest of the elven gods. And it's there that the Phoenix King is determined whenever you need one. There's this constantly burning fire, and it doesn't radiate heat, but if you go inside it, you get judged by the god, and if he thumbs down, you burn to death, and if he thumbs up, you become blessed with his power, and wiser than ever before. So the princes all meet there. You're not supposed to bring weapons, you're not supposed to bring any of that stuff. And this, like, it's a fine plot point. It tracks with Malekith because he's super arrogant, but I find this whole sequence actually just very funny. Like, I laughed out loud reading it. So Malekith walks into this meeting and they're like, hey, where's Belshazzar? Where's the Phoenix King? You're supposed to bring him. And he's like, Belshazzar has been murdered. I walked into his quarters alone, just me, and I found evidence that he's working with the cults, and he killed himself, and I'm the only witness to that. And all of them are like, tracks. Some of them don't fully believe it, but no one's fully like, what the fuck yet. And Malekith says, okay guys, we need to pick a new Phoenix King. I think it should be me. And one of them says, what about Imric? And Malekith immediately loses his shit. He's like, fuck Imric! And stands up and points at him, and he's like, where's Imric right now? He's out hunting and drinking. He never calls. He never writes. Why Imric? And as he's ranting and raving, he's pointing his finger, so his cape is up, and people can see he has a sword. And they're like, hey, Malekith, why do you have a sword? You shouldn't have a... That's like the first rule of this shrine, sent to us by Assyrian. And Malekith's like, time to murder! Pulls out his sword and just starts laying into people, fucking killing everybody around him. All these princes of Ulthuan who showed up. And then his knights flood in and start killing more people. So as he's killing everyone in front of the shrine to Assyrian, like, he's in the shrine to Assyrian, in front of the flame of Assyrian, and the rules set by Assyrian say, hey, don't bring weapons here, hey, don't fight here. And then he walks up to the shrine, he's like, I will be the Phoenix King, it's my right, and I'm going to walk into this fire. And the main priest is like, dude, bro, don't. We, like, put a bunch of wards and spells on Belshazzar to protect him, to make sure nothing bad happened to him, just in case. Like, we haven't had time for the rituals. And Malekith waves him off. He's like, my dad didn't need no rituals. Daddy was a baller. He didn't need nothing. And Malekith just walks in there. Now, he actually thinks Assyrian's going to be like, bro, that was cool, and give him the blessing. He does not. Malekith just burns up. Shrieks, his armor melts into his flesh, his skin is falling off of his body, he collapses, he manages to fling himself out of the fire before dying, and then his knights drag him away. Now pause for a second and why I found this so funny. Somehow, and again, this isn't a plot hole, it's like Malekith's just kind of a dumbass in certain aspects. When it comes to arrogance, he's kind of a dumbass. But like, think of the thought process there. Like, and the analogy I made on stream was, you're in a courtroom, and the judge is in front of you, right? And you're, damn it, I'm blanking on the things. You're the accused, and you're the defendant, there it is. And the prosecutor is like, Your Honor, this man is guilty of the crime of murder. And Malekith on the defense is like, what? I'm not a bad guy. Murders the prosecutor in front of the judge. Murders the whole jury and then turns to the judge and is like, so anyway, we done here? And the judge goes, I find you guilty. And he's like, what? How could I be guilty? No, it is you who are wrong. And I'm like, dude, you did the thing that they were talking about in front of the judge. The judge is God. The God can see you, and even if the God can't see you, you're in his house. Like, what are you doing? You just lifted the biggest middle finger to Asurian, and you're like, anyway, so Asurian, give me your blessing. And Asurian was like, no, and roasted your ass. What did you think would happen? Oh, it's so funny. It's so funny that and like it tracks. That's the funniest part, is that it tracks. Like I'm not shocked he did it. Fucking Malekith, man. So he gets roasted. Morathi was still technically imprisoned, but as his body gets brought there, Belshazzar has been murdered, but they still don't really know that Malekith did it. I mean, the people at the Shrine of Asurian now probably figured that out, but the people back at the capital don't know that. And Morathi gets set free because reasons. There's a lot of corruption, I guess. And she finds Malekith burned. She's like, the High Elves will all pay for this. The wrongs they have done to me specifically. Sure, I raised the cults. Sure, I killed a lot of people. Sure, I flirted with demons. Sure, I wanted to fuck my son. Sure, then my son and I set up a coup to destroy the entire island. Sure, then we tried to kill the king. Sure, then we also killed most of the princes. And then God himself said, no, we're bad people, but fuck you guys! You're so mean to us! So, she is the least likable character, and I legitimately fucking hate Morathi. I just hate her as a character. Whenever she's on the page, I just get angry. Anyway. So she fucks off. And the Sundering War begins. There, we're at last to the actual name of this. Now, it's hard to define when the Sundering starts, but it's pretty much whenever Morathi is breathing, the Sundering has started. So it's all of the High Elves that live a pretty carefree lifestyle of mercantilism and trade versus Nagaraith, who at this point start getting called the Dark Elves, and the people who worship the forbidden gods and pseudo-chaos gods and things like that. Alright. For many years, the war progresses. The Southern Realms were just not ready for battle. So it's like, while the Dark Elves are massively outnumbered, the Southern Realms don't have their shit together, they don't have their armies ready, and most of the dragons are asleep, and that's kind of the worst kept secret on the Elven Islands, but Kalador, the Kingdom of Dragons, more and more of their dragons have been falling asleep every single year, and they're down to one being awake. Imric's dragon. Imric's dragon is the only dragon that's actually up and at him right now. So as the Dark Elves are streaming down, big problems. All of the elves are getting bodied. Avalorn gets mostly taken, like 75% of it's taken, and then the island has to get, well, it's a peninsula and it gets turned into an island because they had to, the Everqueen had to use her magic to just separate itself from Ulthuan to save it from the Dark Elves. Krace falls pretty quickly, Tiranoc falls pretty quickly, things are going bad. But the High Elves are starting to rally, and there's still a numbers problem. Now, the books are really bad about this, and that the Dark Elves always have exactly as many Dark Elves as they need. Like, all of the named characters' battles we see, the Dark Elves are getting completely shit-faced, but somehow they keep showing up, where it's like every battle is 100 noble High Elves versus 500 Druchii scum. And obviously the numbers change, but that's like the odds. And then, against all odds, the High Elves pull it out. But in the scale of the war, there's always more Dark Elves. Which, whatever. It's Warhammer stuff, I know. I know. But, for a while, the Dark Elves are winning. Now, when all seems desperate, there's a bit of a whoopsie. As Imric did become the new Phoenix King, he got done with his hunting in the north and came down to figure out all that shit went down. And he started to rally the troops, rally the men. He is riding the only dragon that's currently awake, and he comes across a black dragon, one of the Dark Elf dragons. Now, the Dragon Society, that mostly lives around Kalador, Dragon Society lost a couple hundred eggs way back in the day. Back in the times of the demons. And they kind of assumed the demons took them and ate them. But what actually happened is Morathi and some of her cult stole the dragon eggs and raised them in secret, so they made the black dragons. Well, Imric's mount is not about it. So he abandons Imric mid-fight because this is such a problem to him. And dragons in Warhammer are actually really interesting. They're, in a lot of other fantasy mediums, they're treated very much like all-knowing and super wise. While in Warhammer, it's like they're smart for an animal. Like, compared to a human or an elf, they would, like, pass high school. But they're still very bestial. So when this guy sees this thing, he recognizes it as one of the 100 eggs stolen, and he knows immediately what happens. So he dumps Imric on the battlefield and flies home as quickly as possible. Goes into the cave where all the dragons are sleeping, and he just starts, like, shaking them. And they're like, oh, fuck, dude, what do you want? What do you want? He's like, wake up! Wake up! And he's, like, slapping them. And they're like, what? What's going on? He's like, I found the eggs. And they're like, you did? That's awesome. He's like, nah, they're evil. And a lot of the dragons are like, you what, bro? And start shaking off the rocks because, like, they've been sleeping so long that the caves are actually, like, stalagmites and stalactites are, like, encasing these dragons. But they're shaking it off. They're like, oh, no, you fucked up now. So it's kind of funny that the Dark Elves might have won the Sundering if they hadn't used their black dragons, because it pissed off the normal dragons so much that they actually bothered to do something. So now the war completely turns on its head as 20, 30, 40 dragons start showing up. The Dark Elves have like 5 ready to go. They're not here for this. And dragons are worth thousands of troops. Like, it's not even close. Total War Warhammer is actually a decent guide for this. Think about how many Dread Spears you could kill with, like, Imric on a Star Dragon. There are no attacking rules. You're just, like, you know, cycle charging, breath attacking. Again, you're not limited to 3 breath attacks. It's like infinite breath attacks. Like, think about it. Yeah, it's a big deal. And they can fly. So Imric and his dragon army is able to just, like, go from battle to battle to battle faster than horses could, faster than boats could, definitely faster than foot infantry can. So there are 3 battles happening at the same time, one at Lothern, one in Illyrian, and one over in Tor Yvresse. And the dragons influence all 3 fights before they're over. Like, you need to understand how crazy that is. And again, it's like having a bus in medieval times, like a bus. And I know there's no roads, but, like, bear with me. Like, you know, people are walking around and shit, and you're just moving an army from, you know, point A to point B 80, 90 miles an hour. Most people can average like 20. It's just the mobility is insane. So they can show up anywhere. They can determine entire fights. They can fuck up things. It's crazy. So the war turns on its head. Imric's looking like a hero. Everybody is very happy. Also, Alethanar is doing Shadow War stuff, but we already covered him. Then we hit a stalemate. The High Elves are super good at this point of counterattacking fights, but they're not great at sieging on their own. They still are somehow massively outnumbered. They're still somehow massively outskilled, even though you've been shown several times. Like, they also like to say, like, oh man, the Nagarath troops are so good, they're so powerful, they're so scary. And then the High Elves fight them and just completely body them, and they're like, no, 1 Nagarath troop is worth like 8 of us, and then they go 1-to-1, or even the High Elves do 2-to-1, so whatever. Doesn't make sense, but sure, whatever. The Dark Elves are too scary to invade their homeland. They can't make any territorial gains. They just have to wait for the Dark Elves to come out, where they can overextend and the dragons can cut them off. Well, the Dark Elves realize that's happening, so they all just sit. And they just sit. And Imric's having a hard time at this point keeping the council together, because there's some people that want to just, like, full balls out charge, and there's other ones that want to sue for peace now that they stalemated. Well, up in Nagarath, Malekith awakens. He survived the burning. He slept for about 5 years. Well, he didn't sleep through the whole thing. He kind of kept waking up in constant agony and suffering. And Morathi managed to corrupt somehow. This is also kind of a stupid plot point, but the Val's anvil, the god Val is a smithing god, and Cain subjugated him and made Val his bitch and, like, tortured him and shit into making the Sword of Cain. And somehow Morathi used that as an argument to Hoeth, I think his name's Hoeth, whatever, the current smith priest of Val. And she's like, I mean, we love Cain, Val served Cain, unwillingly, and like it was the worst moment in his life, and you guys should hate Cain, but yeah, so come work for us. And he's like, okay. So he just does. That one's kind of dumb, but whatever. Goes up north, and he makes Malekith this armor, the armor you know him for. And I didn't know this, but they literally, like, put Malekith on the table, and Marath's like, this is going to hurt. And they, like, bolts it to his skin and, like, his eyelids and everything, because he can't move his body. He's completely paralyzed. But with this armor, he can use magic to move the armor, and that's why it's bolted to his body. So now he can move his body again by using magic. So every movement he makes, he has to cast a spell, which is a whole thing, but whatever. So Malekith gets up, he's like, hell yeah. And then Marathi's like, dude, I held back all of our best troops. Like, your army that went north to the Chaos Waste with you, the Kingsguard, all this stuff, it's all just been sitting here for you. And that, again, raises a problem for me, like, what the fuck? Like, how? What? How? Where? If you kept the army, and you kept the Kingsguard and all this shit, like, back, who have you been throwing to the wolves? Where are you getting these forces? Whatever. And then she's like, oh, and the army from the colonies has showed up. And I'm like, You haven't even used the colony reserves? Where have these forces been? Like, where are all the Dark Elves that are dying coming from? I don't know. It's really poorly written, but whatever. So Malekith takes head of the army on his massive black dragon. And the tides turn again. Malekith proves to be just like a way better commander than the previous people running the Dark Elves, and the High Elves are putting on the back foot. Even with all their dragons, they're having a bad time. Because Malekith has increasingly used traps for the dragons. Like, in one case, he set up a fake encampment and all these tents and stuff, but no one was sleeping in the tents, and all of the tents were bolt throwers. And then when the battle started, his main army retreated, like, ran away, and when the High Elves tried to pursue them and run them down, all those tents came down, and it was like 40, 50, 60 bolt throwers, and like 5, 6 dragons died in that fight in the first, like, 10 seconds. The High Elves had to back the fuck off. So with Malekith, all of a sudden the dragons are getting neutralized a little bit. He's a way better commander, and he's also just super powerful. So Imric takes the new strategy of attacking wherever Malekith doesn't go. So if Malekith ever wants to leave Nagarath, he needs to pick a direction. Let's say he invades Krace, right in the north. Imric will go west and attack Tiranoc. Well, if Malekith goes down to defend Tiranoc, Imric backs off and goes up through Krace and takes the land Malekith just took back and starts to push in on Nagarath. And then if Malekith goes up there to deal with Nagarath, Imric swings south and goes up through Illyrian, attacking a different part. So Imric is just pulling Malekith around, trying to make him make a mistake. Well, Malekith doesn't. Actually, Imric makes the first mistake. Imric overcommits near Eagle Gate. I think it's Phoenix Gate. He overcommits near Phoenix Gate. Malekith actually manages to get there, and we have the final battle at last. All of the High Elves are together with as many dragons as they can muster, with as many mages as they have left, just like their whole army, and all the Dark Elves are there with everything they have left. Final battle ensues. Imric and Malekith battle it out. Malekith actually beats Imric, but Imric gets some help from the Everqueen. From a distance, she offers some magical insight and summons a magical item for him. Well, it was already there, but she kind of like pulled it closer to him, but whatever. He grabs this magical spear, throws it at Malekith's dragon as it's trying to eat him, kills the dragons. So now both their dragons are dead. Actually, I forget. No, I don't think Imric's dragon's dead. I think it just ran away, which is kind of a bitch move, but whatever. So Malekith and Imric are here. Imric is completely exposed on the ground, just laying there, dying. And Malekith walks towards him. And then he hallucinates that Asuryan is talking to him. And he's like, oh, Asuryan, I love you. But it's actually just the Phoenix Guard showing up to kick his ass. And as the Phoenix Guard stab him a bunch, he goes, ah, it was all fake. It was all fake. Asuryan doesn't love me. He wasn't blessing me when he burned me and threw me out of the altar. He was cursing me. Ah, what is this? So then he casts them away and runs back to Mommy because Asuryan doesn't actually love him. And without Malekith, they lose the battle. And that's it. I mean, the Dark Elves are crushed. The High Elves are thinking of rallying to actually invade Nagarath itself, because without Malekith, they killed a lot of that army, even the elite stuff. So, now this is important to remember for the final... This is the end of this... We're coming to the end of the Sundering. This is important to remember. Nagarath was the least populated of all the kingdoms on Ulthuan. Okay? Nagarath was the least populated. Then... Marathi got into the pleasure cults and stuff, so there was sacrifices on the daily of Nagarath citizens. And there was forced conscription. So a lot of the citizens also got press ganged into the army, which lost. So the army is almost entirely wiped out. A lot of civilians are wiped out from being a part of these cults, and Alethanar took a lot of the loyal citizens too. So there's just a ton of attrition on this already sparsely populated area. Okay? Okay. So Malekith gets back to Marathi, and Marathi has all of her sorceresses that are left, and they go, we lost the Sundering. Well, this isn't the Sundering yet. We lost the war for the Phoenix throne. Malekith won't get to be Phoenix King. Or will he? I have a plan to make us the good guys. And they still think they're the good guys in their heads. We will stop the vortex that Kalidor Dragon Tamer made. We'll stop the vortex. Let the demons back out. Summon the demons to Ulthuan. Let them burn all of it to the ground. And then we will ... profit somehow. This part isn't well explained at all, but somehow they're going to hold the demons to their will. Somehow, after they've killed everything? Because what? Okay, whatever. So with no army, they're just going to let the demons out and somehow mind control all of them after they kill off the High Elves to then rule over a demon-infested Ulthuan with demons as their army. Somehow doing a lot of work there. But okay. So all the Dark Elf casters go back to their keeps. Not even cities, just their keeps. And start casting this, ritual. This big ritual. Okay? The vortex starts to slow down. Imric sends his best mage over to the portal with all the mages from Safri he can gather up and wants them to try and figure it out. Meanwhile, Imric has to battle demons that are just starting to appear all around him. They fight for a little bit, and then very quickly, the mages figure out how to get the vortex going again, where essentially Marathi and her sorceresses, to overly simplify it, you know how it's it's a tornado that's constantly going? Their magic is grabbing that tornado and pushing in the opposite direction the equal amount so that the vortex stops spinning. Right? So if it's rotating clockwise, Marathi and her sorceresses are pushing counterclockwise, so there's a net zero movement. And with the Safri mages, they wake up Kalidor, who's actually alive in there. They wake up Kalidor and talk to him, and Kalidor's like, easy fix. Lend me some of your power, and we're all gonna go counterclockwise. So the Dark Elf spell is going to push the vortex counterclockwise now, and it doesn't matter as long as it's rotating, is what Kalidor's saying. He's like, it doesn't really matter. All we're trying to do is siphon the excess magical energy that manifests in the form of demons. We're trying to siphon that here, so as long as it spins, we're good. And the mage is like, that tracks. And he's like, oh, by the way, the world might go bump real quick. And they're like, what? And he's like, yep, does it. So all of the volcanoes near Kalidor erupt, killing most of that nation. Rest in peace, Kalidor. The nation, not the guy. And not Imric, who named himself Kalidor at this point, but the nation. That's not great. And Marathi and them are like, silver lining! We nuked Kalidor! What's that noise? And they turn around and there's giant fucking tidal waves coming behind them through the north towards Nagarath and stuff. So they are going to get drowned, they are going to die, and they quickly cast spells as best they can to isolate their fortresses. And as the water crashes in and just completely swamps all the land and stuff, these fortresses now float. And those are the black arcs you're used to in the future. But they make the first black arcs accidentally, and they sail away with just their keeps. The largest of which being Torrenlek, which used to be the capital, which Malekith and Marathi are on. So, and they float away, and that's the end of the Sundering. This tidal wave knocked away a good chunk of Nagarath with the help of the Dark Elf Sorceress powers. So that's why the northern part of Ulthuan looks all fucked up. That's why all the cities out there are ruins, if you're playing Total Warhammer 2 or 3. And a lot of High Elves died. They will never forgive the Dark Elves. They think the Dark Elves are just the worst of the worst, and the High Elves are permanently crippled after this point. But they did win. And the Dark Elves sail off to the northwest, where Malekith had found the Circlet of Iron. They settled just south of that in these barren wastelands, ever present on revenge. Now, that's the end of the Sundering. That was the story there. It's a good story. I enjoyed reading it. There's a lot of good characters. There's some kind of dumb things, but whatever. I do have a mini rant to go on at the end. Dark Elves are stupid. Dark Elves are dumb. Dark Elves are stupid and dumb. And if you like them, that's fine. But I, as a reader, fucking hate them. Because it makes no sense. It makes zero sense. Now, I've complained several times throughout this video, very briefly, very, very briefly, about the Dark Elf numbers not adding up. But this is the nail in the coffin. That super attrition state that the Dark Elves found themselves in is what they left with. They left with a couple keeps, not even whole cities. The only whole city that went was Torandlek. A couple keeps went with however many people happened to be on those keeps when they left. There was no time to plan an evacuation. So you got none of anybody who was living outside of the center of the city. That population is not enough to start a society. Not enough to start a society in a cold wasteland. Not enough to start a society if most of your, like, rituals and shit is blood, sacrifice, and murder, which you're going to keep doing, and in all instances, they keep doing somehow. Like, no! The numbers on this don't add up. And they live somewhere frozen and cold and shitty, and they can't get food without raiding, so they're raiders, which is a profession that has casualties, because it's violent. Like, no! The numbers aren't adding up on this society. Dark Elves are not a faction. There's no shot. There's no shot they become a superpower in the future. There's no shot they're ever a threat to the High Elves. There's no shot that Malekith ends up leading the Elves in the end times. There's just no shot. This race is dead. They're fucking dead. And honestly, it's just terrible writing that there's always enough. There's always more Dark Elves. Where? Where the fuck did they come from? Like, at least Greenskins and Skaven, when you want to have fodder bad guys for the sake of being fodder, their population systems at least work so you can hand wave it away. Like, brood mothers for the Skaven pump out like 12 kids per batch, and a batch, like, I don't know, every couple weeks. And then you can kind of hand wave how many there are, because their whole thing is they reproduce super quickly. Dark Elves don't reproduce super quickly. And Greenskins are a constant bad guy because the more you kill them, the more you spread their spores, and their spores grow into more Greenskins. So killing Greenskins breeds more Greenskins, making them a good adversary. So Dark Elves, the numbers don't work. They just don't work. They're trash. And as for their, like, main characters, Morathi sucks. And I've talked about this on stream sometimes. Morathi sucks. Morathi suffers from what I call the Orochimaru problem, if you ever saw Naruto. In a lot of animes, there is a type of villain that's essentially Orochimaru. It's the villain where they appear all super knowledgeable, they have some crazy powers you don't fully understand, and when you beat them, they pretend to die and come back later. And they'll always come back, and it doesn't matter how good or hard you killed them, they'll come back because they're so much bigger and smarter than you. And Morathi is that. She's just stupid. Like, I hate this character archetype, and she's just the worst of it, where it's like, I need power. Okay, there's two ways for power, Mr. Elfman. You can either study for a really long time and do things the right way, or you can make a pact with the demons or blood sacrifice in a short-term loss for big power, but like in the long term you're gonna be fucked over or something, or some horrible cost. And Morathi keeps implying that there's horrible costs behind what she did, and she implies that in every book I've ever read of her, like even the Malice Darkblade books and stuff. But like, the reason this character doesn't work is it never comes. Like, she can crush Malekith's heart by just pointing at him at one point in the story. She's an amazing melee combatant because of all the charms and blessings she's done to herself. She's an amazing ranged combatant because of all of her magic and stuff. She can, like, tell the future because the plot wants her to. She's apparently super beautiful. She's forever young. She can live forever. She can do all these things. And what did she give up? Unexplained, imaginable cost. What cost? You're not shortening your life because it lives forever. You live forever. You have no weaknesses. No one can kill you because you just like transmorgify. If you ever die, you just kind of pretend that wasn't you all along. It's bullshit. There is no negative to this. You're just like a broken, non-fundamental character, non physical character in the story. You're like a ghost I don't give a single shit about, but I'm being forced to because you keep getting thrown in to various books and just like ruining them. Because there's no stakes when Morathi shows up. Because it's like, okay, well, she's not real, so what matters? Nothing matters. She can't die, and she's gonna dictate what happens in the story because we always win, like, sort of. Even if everything goes against you, you somehow win just because, I don't know, I made a terrible pact with the demons. What's terrible about it? You just got good things out of it. If you just get good things out of it, why wouldn't everyone just do this? Like, why are you the only one doing this thing? And why does everybody else suck at doing it? Like, I'm gonna make a pact with the demons. Oh no, I did one thing wrong and the demon ate me. It never eats Marathi. She does a ton of shit wrong all the time. It's just stupid. It's stupid. And if you're like, wow, the cost is blood sacrifice. Yeah, other people do blood sacrifice all the time, and they still have meaningful costs. Even some of our other sorcerers have meaningful costs. And I would say, as a literary tool, outside of the universe, as a literary tool, blood sacrifice is not a consequence in a universe like this, where she can just sacrifice her enemies or slaves. It doesn't cost her anything. In well-written instances of dark magic, there's blood sacrifice costs, but there's always a personal cost too. And the moral is, it's never worth it. Like, dark magic is never worth it. It's never worth all the sacrifices you have to make. Because you have to kill people, and then, like, some horrible thing happens to you too if you fuck up. But, like, in this universe, and in poorly written universes, in my argument, it's just a positive. Because you get to kill your enemies while becoming more powerful at the same time, and everyone should be doing this. And it just makes me feel like anybody not doing blood magic is a fucking idiot. So it's stupid. It's stupid. I hate Marathi. I hate Orochimaru. And if you like those characters, you're allowed to have that opinion, but you're wrong. No, I'm being slightly humorous. I don't like them, but if you actually like them, that's your prerogative. But I just thought it was kind of a funny rant to go on at the end of this video here. So that was the Sundering. That was the Sundering. Next up will probably be Throg or the Red Duke. I've started the War of the Beard omnibuses, so I might be able to talk about some of those characters. And stuff, but I need some time to read that, so the next lore video will probably be on a book I've already read. Which I think those are the characters from it that I even have to choose from. So, yeah, hopefully you enjoyed this. That's all. Goodbye. Roar.
Subscribe, yes, yes.